All right. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hayes County Beekeepers Association. I'm Derek Duvall, the Vice President, and we have a fantastic speaker lineup tonight. Right over here, Ethan. Good chat with him. We're going to run through the announcements, and then we're going to do some Q&A that when you showed up. That's good. Quick reminder of some websites you may want to visit. This is our board, our volunteer board. Make sure all the cool stuff happens. Announcements. Mark here, our AV guy, is also in charge of the library. And we're trying to build out our library now. If you've got any beekeeping books you think would be good to donate, talk to Mark right here. Quick reminder, if you're not a member yet, these are the membership levels, and you can also find this information on our website. You're welcome to come to the meetings whether you're a member or not, but we hope you can. Oh, we've got a cool thing coming up in July, the Honey Harvest Festival out at Vista Brewing. Maybe you've ever been out there in off of 150 Driftwood. But we're partnering with them to raise money for our youth scholarship program. And so we have several opportunities. We have an opportunity for volunteers. If you want to volunteer, talk to me or Mark or Jenna there at the registration table. Or send an email. One of the cool things we're going to have is this $100 peanut hive thing. And the idea behind this is it's like a team building. You've got your business or your company that wants to do team building. You pay $100. You can paint a beehive, however you want to paint it. And then it gets donated to the youth scholarship program through Vista Brewing. All right. Did I miss anything about the Honey Harvest Festival? I just talked about the peanut hive thing. What else is going on? Oh, the honey. Yes, so they're collecting honey donations. They're going to make a special beer using the honey that we've donated. And if you donate honey, you get a free mug of it when it's done. So and you get recognized for your honey donation. How much honey do they? There's apparently no minimum. So whatever you can feel comfortable partying with. Yeah. I know I don't have every single member on here because I think I just saw an email come in today, but thank you to the new members, Steve, Patrick, Cody, Laura, Sharon, John, Tina, and Daniel. And also a special thank you to our platinum and business members. Reminder that we do have lending equipment available for our members. We've got a bee vacuum if you're out there trying to rescue some bees from somewhere. We've got a couple of extractors. The one on the left here is the right size for most of us, 2 frames. This is an enormous one that's been sitting in my house for over a year because nobody ever checks it out. Reminder that our next meeting will be right here, same time, same place, July 20th. Business member services. I realized the way that I've been presenting these slides and I'm using some people, folks that are business and platinum members get to put a slide up here. That's what these slides are. And I think previously it appeared that these slides were like activities that were sponsored by the club. And that's not true. These are just friends of ours who are business or platinum members. So if you're interested in any of the activities in the next few slides, visit the website or scan the QR code to learn more about it. This particular slide is about the apprenticeship. I think almost all of the board members have gone through this. I went to this apprenticeship when I was about 4 years into beekeeping, and I learned a ton of stuff. Really good stuff. St. Abby's Bees, 5% discount for current HCBA members. And tonight's speaker is Ethan West. Before we get into the speaker, though, we're going to have Natalie come up and do Q&A. Well, 6:30, if I can get attention.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hays County Beekeepers Association. What a nice turnout. This is great. Who's new in the room for beekeeping? Quite a few hands. Who's new to HCBA? Few more hands, but still, yeah, very good. Welcome, everyone. I'm Natalie. I work with Be Mindful with Les Crowder. We manage about 400 colonies across 50 yards. And we have a beekeeping school. So we teach beekeeping classes and apprenticeships. And therefore, I'm here to answer all your questions. So if you have or don't have these, and if you have questions about what's going on around in the area, don't hesitate, raise your hand. Let me know what you're seeing right now. And I can see if I can help you out. So who's first? Over here.
So we found a live hive last month. Everybody here? Yeah. Okay. And we moved it into a brand new top bar, which we built. We don't know whether we did it right. If we did it correctly. The bees are still hanging out around the hive. They're underneath the roof, but they're not inside. I don't know if that's normal or not.
So they might not be accepting it quite yet. How long has it been? 2 days? Do you have any old comb, or do you know anybody that can give you some old comb to put in their hive? Oh, really? So it's already in there. Do you have another hive with brood, open brood especially? Another colony with open brood? Nothing. First thing, okay. Well, it's gonna be kind of hard. If you can find the queen, maybe you can put her in the clip, put her in the box. Yeah, that's kind of tough for beginners. Do you have anybody, which area are you in? Right up the street. Okay, so there's plenty of beekeepers here. So who is willing to help him? Dad? Anybody else? Dad is willing to help you. She's sitting right here. She can talk to you and potentially has maybe some comb and some brood, maybe like some open brood that you can donate. And then by putting that in the hive, that's going to help them wanting to take care of those babies and hopefully move in and just kind of not leave. Right now, they're not sure what they want to do. Right. Okay, so do you have comb and brood in there? They're starting to. Well, then they might be bearding because of the heat and the humidity. I doubt that's going to be because of nectar curing because they just got in there, but maybe a little bit. Maybe they took whatever was in there and stored some stuff and they're trying to cure it. But mostly it's been very hot and humid, so maybe there's just kind of bearding. If more of them are inside than outside, that's good enough. Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say, you don't wanna be, right now, you just wanna leave them alone and wait another week and see what happens. I thought that they were just all outside, so my apologies for this. Yeah. So good, so, but Deb is willing to help out if you have questions. She's local and she's a very experienced beekeeper. She owns dripping honeybees and she produces a lot of honey. That's delicious, persimmon honey, so. Anybody else? Other question? Yes, sir.
So I harvested honey last week. And had a 20 honey. In one of my hives, it had a mix between honey, capped honey. And I didn't touch it. I figured I'd come back in a week or two, maybe the fruit's gone. That's the right idea.
You're in a line straw? Okay. So you've got a couple boxes, a super, which has both honey and a couple of deeps and a super, and what you want to harvest is in the super? Okay, so generally speaking, the supers are put on top of the line straws to add space and hopefully get them to store surplus honey so that you can then harvest it. So when you have a mix between in the box with brood and food, you cannot harvest the combs with brood. You can only harvest whatever is surplus at the top, or maybe because you have a large colony, you could take out a comb of honey on the outside on both sides, but you have to kind of look at what's in there. Typically, they're gonna have the brood in the center of that vertical stack, right? So look in there, and if you have the external frames full of honey, then you can bypass whatever is in the center, which is gonna be, you're saying it has some brood, right?
Actually, that should be. Then there's no fruit.
Yes, so you're correct. Once the capped brood emerges, they might or might not backfill with honey, nectar, depending on what the forage is still doing, right? So if you still have a lot of honey coming in, they will do that, and then you can harvest. So maybe that's just not ready for you yet. But what is going on though is that you're gonna have a huge population once that capped brood emerges. From each of those frames of capped brood, you're gonna get 3 frames of bees. Covering, you know, other combs. So you're gonna have an increased population once that capped brood emerges, right? So yes, they could backfill with nectar if they're starting to contract for any reason and they want to get all that nectar in, and then you can harvest them. So you kind of have to go in and take a look at what's going on in your hive. Yeah, but if you know they don't, if they choose to kind of go back with brood, then look for some frames that are on the outside. Some colonies like to just brood everything, so it depends. And if you want to guarantee they don't brood up in your supers, which you want to harvest, you have a double deep. You could at this point put a breed excluder between your 2 deep and your super. And once the brood emerges, it's gonna just go through the hive, but they're gonna have to choose to use that for something else than brood because the queen's gonna be at the bottom. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll be right back with you.
Good evening, everyone. We just opened up some hives at our farm that haven't opened up in 3 years. They're laying straws and they're just packed full of bees and they're overpopulated. They're leaving them outside the box, there's just not enough room in there. And since it's such short notice, we were kind of really hoping that there was someone who could sell us or lend us boxes to kind of expand these laying straws. In the meantime, we'd like to transfer them to the top bar system, but in the meantime, I think it's a priority that we give them a little bit more room. And I said, all it's just half the day, so that's that.
Very cool. So here's what I recommend. To give them some space, you could put them additional equipment like straw. But if you're intending on transitioning to top bar, you can leverage that workforce that you have, that size, that population in there to give them either a conversion attachment to the line straw box. We talked about that in our apprenticeship a lot. So basically a baby top or nuke that you cut open on one end and you affix to the bottom board. You will need 1 extra box for this to kind of prepare it for the conversion and then bring it over and swap out the bottom box, all the frames in there. I can go through it with you, offline. There's also a blog entry on our website at bee-mindful.com that explains kind of the principle on the horizontal hives, but it also applies to the vertical stacks of the lynx straw. Now, what you can also do, especially if they're really large and populous, you can do a shoot form. And you can take the queen, if you can find her in there, and a bunch of the bees, shake a bunch of the bees in there, as long as they've got some eggs that they can make another queen with. That's kind of an emergency procedure. And then so you can shake those bees into the top bar, and they'll start building. You probably want to use a little bit of a queen excluder initially so she doesn't run off and they don't leave, unless you have home that you can give them. And even better, again, open brood that's going to entice them to stay, like we were talking about earlier. And but it's better to wait until you have swarming conditions. So at that point you have swarm cells, and then you don't even need to look for your queen. You can leave swarm cells into the lynx straw, the donor colony, and then give the other one some swarm cells as well, and some open brood again to entice them to stay. So there's plenty of ways to do this. Okay. Sorry, I forgot the end of my response. Yes. So, Jenna, do you need boxes at HCBA? And frames. Okay. So, Tanya at Bee Friendly Austin should have some 10 frame lynx straw supers. She's on 290 towards town. Bee Friendly Austin. Yeah, and if she doesn't, you can go up north. There's in Maynard, there's 2 Hives Honey, and then up north, there's the Bee Supply. Bees in the, yeah, she's not very far. She's probably closest after Tanya. Yeah, and they get 5% discount all of our bee members. This is a very recent thing, so yeah, it's not too far, so you can never check. I'm sorry, you had a question.
We are brand new, well, we're newer to the area, but I have no experience with bees, so I've got a couple questions with regards to. All right. Well, we saw a webinar you guys did a few years ago. So is it such that the 5-year waiting period that you have? So we've got 16 acres, and I think you get the calculation, I think that's 13 colonies you have to have for that. So do you have to meet the 13 colony requirement for each of the 5 years, or is it on the 5th year? Yeah. So on just on the 5th year? Okay, by the 5th year. Okay, so when gotcha. Okay.
So if you have any evaluation questions, that's what we do. I manage about 400 colonies over 40. I mentioned that earlier, and that's mostly ag valuation services. So maintenance of people's hives, and then we lease them as well. So we're very versed, especially in Hayes County. So if you have questions, we're here to answer them. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I have a newbie question. My first hive. I just picked it up 2 weeks ago. The question is, how long do I keep feeding the hive sugar? Or how do I know that it's time to stop feeding them?
Question. So, new colony and new, I'm guessing that you installed recently, was it that was not a package, that was a new, right? Okay, so it depends. Very often in beekeeping, it's going to depend what you're seeing in your colony. If they're bringing in a lot of food, then you don't need to feed them, because they're finding nectar is better for them, and they might actually not even take that feeding. If they're not getting enough, then you might consider keep on feeding them. But we don't recommend a whole lot at the time. You don't want to feed gallons and gallons and gallons, because what happens is they backfill the brood nests, and they have nowhere to lay, and then they end up decreasing in population, and have plenty of people kill their colonies that way. So you kind of have to look at what's going on in the hive, the amount of brood that's open, and what they're doing. and just kind of evaluate based on that. Now, once the nectar flow goes off in the summer, in the heat of the summer, you might consider to just kind of, because they're brand new, it's kind of an emergency in itself, right? So you might consider feeding them through the summer, but no more than about a quart, maybe 2 maximum, every 5 to 7 days, right? So don't overfeed. Yeah. Does it answer your question? Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Is one of our apprentices.
Is awesome. So I'm Kim, and I just wanted something for Natalie. I thought it was very interesting that you were legally not allowed to sell honey from a cutout. So I thought, Natalie, you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, selling it, right? So, Kim and Mike have proper hives, and a lot of that is natural comb. So you get a lot of options to do cut. And that's really great. You can sell a square of comb for, if you market it properly and maybe go to the farmer's market for about $45 a square. So one of those combs could fetch you about probably almost 150 bucks, right? And you can get the leftover from that half hexagon shape into liquid honey to make charcoal. So to sell it, you can use cassettes that you can use any containers. It depends how you want to do it. Do you want to do fancy? Do you want to do just like easy? What do you want to do?
This is about for the gentleman who's selling honey on the side of the road from a cutout.
I thought you said cotton. Sorry. Okay. So let's talk about removal honey for a second. People do removals from structures where bees have nested in the walls, in the attic, in the trash can of your neighbor, or whatever. So these bees get removed, and very often if it's done properly, you're gonna have to remove the comb. And a lot of it, especially this year, is gonna be filled with honey, right? So it's very tempting to say, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and extract all that honey, crush and strain, whatever, and I'm gonna recover that liquid honey and I'm gonna sell it. Well, it's illegal. It's illegal for many reasons, because could be, contaminants. It could be construction contaminants, insulation fibers, rodent feces, bugs, all kinds of stuff. So it's actually illegal. But if you see somebody that's selling it on the side of the road, and I know somebody that's selling it on the side of the road, I went to you and I was like, oh, you're a beekeeper. It's like, no, I'm not, but my friend is a remover. So, and I was like, oh, and I was like, so he gives you his honey? Like, yeah, and then I just put it over a calendar and I trade it and I bottle it and I sell it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And there's people that have been sued for that kind of behavior because some people have gotten sick or something might have happened, and I don't know exactly the circumstances, but it's the liability for you to do that. So just so you know, when you go and find somebody on the side of the road that's selling liquid honey, ask the right questions. Is that your honey? Are you the beekeeper? Do you buy and resell? Do you treat your hives if you care about that? Like, I wouldn't buy honey from hives that have been treated with pesticides personally. That's my personal choice. So I'm asking, what did you treat your bees with? And people are very happy to tell you what they've treated with if they do treat. If you do ask, do you treat your bees? They tend to not tell you, right? They tend to tap dance and say, well, not really, only natural stuff. But turns out they use stuff in their house. So just ask the right questions when you find somebody on the side of the road that's selling honey. Does it answer your question? Okay. Yes, thank you. Anybody else? How are we doing on time? Anybody else? Right here? I have a question. Oh, sorry.
We're at the Sky Ranch, and all our bees froze in that last really bad freeze that we had. So we replaced them. We have 4 hives. Yes. Yes. And my question is about watering. So my husband Joe installed a drip type of water system. It's not just keep that going throughout the year, and should we be supplementing, I've heard about sugar water, so we're beekeeping. Do you offer beekeeping classes at this guy ranch? But it's really the water and the sugar water or.
So the sugar water kind of goes back to what the gentleman was asking over there. You gotta look at what's your colonies and estimate if they have enough for themselves or if they don't. And it's based on the season as well. There's all kinds of factors. If they've got plenty in there, you don't need them. That's the bottom line. If the comb is like really light on nectar and they've got fruit and they've got really, you don't see a whole lot of food and we're going into a dearth, that's kind of like, you don't want them to, you're taking a risk if you don't feed them. We don't feed our bees for many reasons because we think that they should kind of fend for themselves and figure it out on their own. But of course, everybody's different and we have different investments into what we've got in our managed water. So I've got plenty to play with and to make it for what I can share resources. But so the point is that if you do feed, don't overfeed. Don't overfeed or maybe maximum a couple of quarts. And it's also based on the size of your colony, right? But Darren is also one of our apprentices. So he can tell you what you can Darren over here. He can tell you how to feed and whatnot. Water, bees go through an enormous amount of water in the summer, especially. They use it for many things, including feeding their young. They need all that water content to make the bee milk, the worker jelly. So they need it for that to start with in the spring. But as the weather gets hot, they need it to use as a swamp cooler principle. They will mist some of that water over the comb and especially bird's nests. And then they will fan their wing and circulate the air to create, exchanges of temperatures and pull out that heat and adjust the temperature to a specific level. Humidity and temperature are very controlled in the bird's nest. So they do need a whole lot of water. So if you don't have water on your property, they're going to work that much harder to go find water. And they will even bother your neighbor with his pool or with his dog bowl and all this stuff. And so you want to kind of like provide water. I recommend within 30 feet, and I'm sorry, on the property as close as possible to 30 feet. But not too close either, because if it's too close, they know that they go to the restroom when they get out of the hives. Very often they'll relieve themselves. So if it's too close, they know it's going to be contaminated, right? So don't put it closer than 30 feet. But after that, as close as possible. Jenna was showing the little baggies with the corks. Yeah, so those are freebies, I'm guessing. So you can use those in the water source as floaters because the bees don't swim, they drown for the most part. They're not like wasps, so they need something to land on. Rocks, water plants, sticks, forks, anything, or even those clay beads that float on the surface, all kinds of things. And then you want to make sure that the water source never dries out or they will abandon it. So something on the autofill is better. The drinking is great as long as it keeps going throughout, on a regular basis, and it's got enough. That's what we're gonna do. You don't have necessarily to aerate it, but if a bowl or whatever, a dog bowl on an autofill is fine. If you don't want mosquitoes in there, put mosquito fish in there, right? Or even those stumps are good, but you have to keep putting. Yeah, it's innocuous to the bees, but you have to keep reapplying. So get yourself to or whatever, get a handful of mosquito fishes. They're going to reproduce and they're going to control your mosquitoes naturally. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Anybody else? How are we doing? Camille, do I have time? One more. Camille is the last question.
The bees have been in with me. They're doing the inference where it looks like they're
It looks like back here. Okay, so.
And disinfect the entrance.
Talking about washboarding, when you have a bunch of bees on the outside near the entrance, but they're kind of like in a squadron, and they're all kind of like facing the same direction really, and they're all kind of rhythmically moving back and forth. And you'll see their front legs will be doing this, and they brush their antennas at the same time. That's called washboarding. Nobody actually really knows what it's for, but a good guess it would be it's a disinfection of the general area to the entrance of the nest. It's also keeping the young bees busy, doing something outside of the box, especially when it's hot, right? And I think that personally, I wouldn't be surprised if it was marking the general entrance of the hive or the box with some kind of a pheromones that makes it easier to find. And that's kind of potentially, my opinion, some reason why old boxes are best to try to catch swarms. So nobody knows for sure though, those are just my conjectures. So thank you very much, everybody. If you have any questions. Thank you.
Let's do that. All right, gang, it is time for Ethan West is a member of the board of the Cargill Club. And he is in the process of transitioning from his real job to making beekeeping his real job. And he has a lot of fantastic experience to share with us tonight. So Ethan, welcome.
When I started coming out to clubs, with the Kerrville Club, now the second Kerrville Club. You probably noticed I'm 26. I've been keeping bees for 15 years. And so we actually became isolated from the clubs for about a period of 9 years. And we kind of went and did our own thing, right? I'm sure COVID
doing that meeting on
as a barber by profession. What did I do? I wanted to do something, which was cut beehives out. So I decided I was
out there.
Over the summer.
I told you that. I texted you.
Probably cut out 40 times.
Go look.
Didn't really pop really well. Really sometimes. And then I had a choice. Do I sell them or do I keep them? I went double or right. And I hit it about, and I realized, wait a second, things in this world cost money. That put a major damper on my plan. So I started a rhythm of basically every year I just about tripled. With the economy and stuff, but for the season at 65 hives, and I'm at 71. It sounds pretty lousy, doesn't it? Right? But what if I've also sold 60 and we're producing 2,000 pounds of honey this year? And we're about to double next month. So, you know, we're rocking along. So what you'll find that is with really experienced beekeepers, they all have their own style. You know, when they go into beekeeping, no experienced beekeeper approaches problems the same way. Personally, I view bees like Legos. You know, when I was a little kid, I sit there with the Lego box, you got all these pieces and parts. And that's how I view beekeeping, which is kind of weird. Maybe I'm just a weird guy. I don't know. But these are my beekeeping basics. These are things I wish I would have known in that first year or 2 year. A lot of this stuff is just kind of my foresight. Take it or leave it, you know. So we'll get into it. So these are general takeaways. You'll see a bunch of jokes throughout my little video. So It's kind of a multi-screen right there. Anyhow, beekeeping, for everybody who's new to beekeeping, is the only agricultural practice where you have to be perfect. And I say perfect, you have to fall between the range. For example, with beekeeping, if you feed your hive too much, you lose half your bees. They swarm, right? Which is quite difficult compared to other types of agriculture. For example, if you have a cow, you feed it a lot of hay, you just have a bad cow. You don't lose half the cow. Right? Beekeeping, feed your bees, they do too well, you lose half the bees. That's kind of awful, ain't it? You know, at least I think it's kind of bad. So new beekeeping tip, learn. Y'all guys are gonna need to research. If you don't pursue this with a lot of enthusiasm, you will probably fail, right? However, it is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever pursued. And I did not start willingly. My dad dragged me along and I started keeping bees with him. I was a lot more scared of him than bees. And so I'd sit there, you know, and hand tools, go, here you go, you know. Also, a tip for experienced beekeepers, if you learn something, tell me, because I don't know what I'm doing. Out of the new beekeepers, raise your hand, like if you're new to beekeeping in the room. Okay, if you have a beehive or a beekeeper, I just want y'all guys to know that there's a lot of people out there that go, well, I don't know anything, so they distance themselves. If you have bees by accident, on purpose, whatever, you're a beekeeper now, so congratulations and good luck, you know. So something else I want to get into is everybody in this room has different types of hive pods. What's interesting about bees is, have you ever seen the science experiment where they take the squatty little glasses and the tall ones, but they're all the same volume, you take the water, you just pour it into the next glass, and the water takes the form of the glass. The water's not different, but it takes the form of the vessel that it's in. And when you do cutouts, what you'll realize is they'll be in under lawnmowers, ice chests, barbecue pits, ceilings, floors, walls, whiskey barrels, 50-gallon drums, flower pots, list goes on, you know. And so it's just something to keep in mind that if you have a friend that is, let's say, has a top bar, has a hybrid top bar, whatever, the bees are just the same, you know. And so if you're seeking out new experiences and somebody to help you, just because they have a different volume of bees doesn't exclude them. Go hunt them down and annoy them and make them teach you things. That's what I'm saying. So that's what I did. Let's see. Okay, so for new beekeepers, these are one of the three most important cycles for y'all guys to learn. There's a lot of processes you can use online. They'll teach you very beekeeping basic stuff, but I find these are the three most important things to know. So the queen life cycle. If you ask me exactly what happens during the queen life cycle, I'm gonna be standing there going, well, I don't know that. But what I do know is queens, their eggs are capped at 9 days. And she's hatched and laying in 30. That's what you need to know. Kind of simple, huh? Right? That's what I use. When I look in a hive and I go, oh, some of these cells are capped, some of them aren't. That means that my queen, she's probably not there. If they're all open, she might still be running around in there. And it's quite simplistic, but for your new beekeepers, that's an easy way to remember it. So yearly growth stages of beehive. That's something else that's very important in natural beekeeping. We kept our bees naturally for about 9 years. And so what's kind of interesting is in the spring, they start out little because they come out of winter. They bulk up, right? They get bigger through the spring and their population peaks during August And then they start shrinking again because resources become low and they get a little bump in the fall on the way to winter. And so it's a growing process and a shrinking process. And the reason I mention that is to where if you're looking at your bees in August and all of a sudden queen isn't laying, the hive is shrinking. There's no pollen out there. There's no resources for her to use. So that's something that is really important. And it seems very basic. But you got to get the basics down first before, you know, you got to crawl before you fly. You know, the swarm cycle. So it's bees' biggest motivator is to reproduce. It's not to make us honey. It's not for us, you know. And so it's one of those things that y'all guys, how many people are in here? It's probably like 100 people. Y'all guys are all looking at bee half. I've been a bee half, you know, and when resources are rich, many times that they fill up their space, they swarm. For those of you who don't know, is whatever vessel that you have, whether it's a flower pot, or if it's a top bar, it's a Langstroth, that's a single box, or 3 boxes tall. But you'll find that when they fill up that space, they'll split.
Found the chicken and I put it in the
Where was it?
freezer.
And I know that's very basic, but I thought I'd lay that out there for the beginner beekeepers. How many of how many
You open it up,
second,
you look down, boom, right there.
I got
Pick it
some
up.
nuggets
Bury it
later.
in.
What kind of bags it in?
I
gotta make sure. Don't
There's
worry.
chicken on it. Seasoned chicken.
Oh,
I moved all those bags and everything around in there.
a new beekeeper, let's say you have your hive for the first year. I'm gonna go through the most common scenario. You bought newts in the spring, right? Or a package, right? For everybody
It
who
is
does.
growing, so that'll get it trying to thaw anyways.
On average, the way the timing typically lands is you get your newts usually in May, you catch the other half of spring, right? And you get kind of 3/4 of a box. You hit August, you're not quite a box. You keep feeding them, you crawl up,
Get started, you're dripping.
right?
What?
So what time did you get started? You were dripping.
First
I
year.
don't know what time it was. It was hot as fuck.
This is the Langstroth. What you'll find with top bars, because they have to make their own wax, they'll actually average less. Right? Wax is the most intensive resource that bees make. Let me get this right. Teaspoon of honey to 1 bee, 7 pounds of honey to 1 pound of wax. It's very labor intensive. So if they start off with 5 grains of wax, they're gonna be a lot bigger come fall. Right? If you dump a package in, which for those of you raw bees, you stick them in a vessel and they start making wax, you know, they'll hang on something and make wax. That's a very intensive process. Wax is your most important resource as a beekeeper, unless you don't have bees. If you have just a bunch of wax, you got no bees. Well, you know, if you only got one hive, right? So my advice is to feed them and nurture them. Start familiarizing yourself with bees. I worked for a PhD in like animal nutrition as a ranch hand. I'm gonna say this is worse than rocket science. Okay, and I've done rocket science, believe it or not. Fredericksburg, I could do that, man. I worked for this nutrition. We calculate take away from the brewers yeast whole year. And he was hard though. To get back. Oh, with sorry, it's been a long day. Where was I, guys? I was on a roll.
You're at the.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah, I'll only get it worse. But anyhow, your biggest goal for the first year is to make wax. That's very basic, it's to make wax. It doesn't matter what vessel that you're in. Personally, if I was doing it all over again, I would get nukes. Nukes get you much further ahead because you don't have to make 5 frames of wax. Economically, it's the best way to get ahead on your hives. When you're just starting out, like if you're B4, be broke, you don't got nothing, get nukes, you know.
And ducking third year, that's getting wax.
Yep. It's not until your third year you start getting spare wax. That's what you just said, and that's just about true. Risk is greater than reward for first year beekeepers. I had a fellow who bought 4 nukes from me, and he went, "Hey, how's it going? Buying these nukes. What do you think about splits?" And I'm like looking at him like, but I'm gonna tell you no, don't. And you can, I don't know if you guys can see it.
Trigger warning on this joke. It's hilarious, but probably gonna piss some people off. Okay, so a blind man walks into a bar, pulls up a bar stool. He says, "Hey bartender, wanna hear a joke about liberals?" She stops for a moment and says, "Sir, I'm liberal. That waitress over there, she's liberal. The busboy, he's liberal. You still wanna tell that joke?" He thinks, ponders for a moment and says, "Nah, I don't have to explain it 3 times.
On why heresy,
Trigger warning on this joke. Hilarious, but probably.
it's a phenomenon. They share them, they get rained on, whoop, they die, right? And you want to figure out why. And this is one of those fellows that if you think too loud around him, you'll hear it. You know, and I asked him, well, what did you do first? Because he was a cow fellow. He said, well, I went out there and I looked at him. And I'm looking at him. This is about when I was 19. I'm like, you went out and you looked at the sheep and you went, yes, I did. I don't know anything about sheep. And he told me, why would I write anything about sheep if I don't know their nature? And he'd sit out there and he'd watch these sheep, just study them. And that is an element that's very missing in beekeeping. So familiarize yourself with bees. You know, if all of a sudden you just drop a frame in a box and they all go, and then they start whacking you, maybe you did something wrong, right? Maybe set them down gently. And that seems like a very simple thing, but there's a very practical element to beekeeping that is not on the internet. Don't be a keyboard beekeeper. Go out there, check them every week and a half, stay on it, you know, learn. Most of my experience is on hand, but I can tell you this, my beekeeping operation would crumble if I didn't have my basics down too. It's part research, part practice, and that is what they call an art, right? You got to have both elements. So something else, number 3, seek out people and annoy them until they teach you something about bees. If you see somebody to locate them, get them, go get them. Because you standing there next to somebody and them showing you stuff is going to get you a lot further than some internet reading. I was isolated for 9 years. Just imagine where I'd be if I wasn't permanent, living out in a bush. You know, I might actually learn something. Oh, by the way, if any of you guys, I don't know why you want pictures, because I'm not all that good looking, but you can take film of me if y'all guys want to remember this. I don't care. Now, so feeding rates for August. August is typically the hardest part. This is kind of my go-to in my head. If you have 5 frames, I didn't want to burp into the microphone. If you have 5 frames, they'll take half a gallon of feed, 10 frame, 3/4 of a gallon, 15, 1 gallon, 20 frame, 1.5 gallons. Yes, sir. This is just general frames the size of a beehive. So how how big a beehive is, and it's a good thing you mentioned this. When I say 15 frames, they cover 15 frames. The total amount of bees, they cover 15 frames, both sides, right? How I judge a beehive is I'll look down in it, and if they're, let's just say 5 frames, for example, they only cover 5 frames on both sides in there, and you'll see a circle, an ellipse of the area that they cover. And that's how you judge how big they are. Do not feed a 1.5 gallon bee to a 20 frame hive that only inhabits 2 frames. No good. Oh, something else, promoting growth. Here's a nugget. Something to keep in mind, baby bees don't typically travel far to make wax. If you're putting new foundation into a hive to promote growth, put it between cap root. The baby bees will hatch, and they'll be right there to make that wax for you. Something else to keep in mind is they need fuel to make wax, right? What was it? Was 7 pounds of honey to 1 pound of wax? So something to keep in mind, they need fuel. So if they don't have ample resources, like a good amount of honey in there, if you just leave them alone, they probably won't draw it out in the drier season. Something to keep in mind. Let's see. So for top bar hives, I would say, because top bar hives are typically the shape of the cone, just like this, right? So I would say 7 frames to a 1/2 gallon. And then I would say 12 frames, 13 frames to 3/4 of a gallon, 18 to 19 frames for 1 gallon. And I would say something like 23 frames for 1.5 gallons. Now, what you got to keep in mind is that the brood chamber does not change its size dramatically for most hives. And sometimes you got a super queen and she just pads someone, you know, but most brood chambers about the size of basketball, right? And that size doesn't typically change. That remains constant. And they build on top of that, right? So what I'm getting at, you see how when I go from 5 to 10, I don't go up to 1 gallon, it's 3/4 of a gallon. That's because the brood chamber typically doesn't increase in size as drastically, because it will only get about as big as a basketball, right? So, you know, that's why.
Unless you have a really prolific queen.
So, just so you guys know, there is a man named Ernie Welch. And he's a queen breeder. And I use one of his queens, it's a monster. I'm scared of that tree. It is a full 10 frame box, just solid brood sheets. And it just keeps on rolling. And that's probably the volume of, not quite a basketball, something like that, like a deflated beach ball or something, I don't know. I don't know what to compare it to, it's a monster, but anyhow, so, yes, ma'am. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So that's about a 1.5 to 2 weeks, right? Something else to keep in mind when you feed your hives. They store their feed. That's what bees do. They store it. They move it from one place to a bunch of frames to the other. So something you need to keep in mind, and I'm about to touch on it in this next slide, is they don't get honey back. Right? You don't want them filling up all their space, because then they don't have room to lay. There was someone else raising their hand. Oh, okay, perfect. Something else I thought I'd mention. I'm sure you guys have heard of bee space. If you've done any research, you know, bee space, a certain amount of space they build, wax, certain amount of space, they fill in cracks, things like that. I thought I'd mentioned, for new beekeepers, if you have wax or plastic contamination, make sure-
What's the process of checking paperwork? Walk me through a situation. Mark up with my paperwork. I would put it down on the table. I would say, this is my paperwork. This is what it's for. I need to see your paperwork right now. How long did they have to show their paperwork? Immediately.
If you saw someone like me on the yard, white, nerdy kid,
And what's gonna happen is, one, your hive's gonna swarm, or they're gonna build on it, build it out maybe half an inch and build all the way down to where it'll be like. Look at my microphone for a second. Let's pretend this is the frame. They'll build out like this, off of it. Kind of like an ugly wasp nest, and then you're trimming all that stuff off. It's terrible. So yeah. Yes, that's because you don't have wax on the frame. The bees have idly chewed it off during the winter in August, when there's no resources to gather. They don't have an ample amount of food to make wax. And you can get in trouble. I discovered that when I put a super on. And what perplexed me, I had a bumping little hive, it was doing well. I'm going, oh, this is great. Throw a super on there, 2 new frames in the middle with fresh wax. They built on those, and then they swarmed. They left the other 8 frames completely untouched. And what I realized is that bees do not perceive those plastic walls as usable space when they're not coated with wax. Something to remember. Something else is, here's what's ironic. If you pop that plastic out, they will view it as usable space as an empty void. Pretty cool, huh? Things to watch for as a newbie. Lack of a queen. You'll see cell. Lack of brood and bees. Warty frames. When I say warty, they'll look very bumpy, very ragged. Typically you'll get a laying worker in there, and you'll get an eye for it. You'll look down, you'll go, something ain't right. You know, add a queen. If it's your first year, add a queen. Don't make it. That's mine. I guess you say nugget to y'all. The reason I say add a queen is it takes 30 days to make a queen. You only have 4 active beekeeping months in the spring. It's too much time. It's going to set you back if you have a new hive. At least that's how I see it statistically. So lack of hive space, that's a problem too. Everything's a problem, right? Everything. Lack of hive space. Let's say your hive's doing well. It fills up its box. Add another box. Add more frames. If you got a feeder in there, add another 2 frames. That's a problem too. Add boxes, bars, etc. Whatever you got, whiskey barrels, if you're stacking those up, add another whiskey barrel. There are people who keep these in whiskey barrels. There's a Facebook group. I was like, what's this? Okay, lack of laying space. Lack of laying space is not the same as hive space. So let's say you go in there, it's all filled up with honey. There's no space for the queen to lay. Let's say you were honey bound because you were just ramping up that feed, right? You were just getting with it. Honey bound is a problem that a lot of people struggle with when they have 2 or 3 hives. What I do is, if I'm honey bound, there's too much honey, grab a sheet of honey. People scream at me. Set it outside, scrape it, let bees rob it out. Then you'll have an empty wax frame. Stick it in the middle for the queen to lay in. If you don't, your hive will swarm. And it's because queens only need to feel crowded to swarm. And I'll get into that later. That's an advanced topic. But anyhow, another thing with brood. That's actually kind of a problem. Usually when you see a lot of brood, I don't sit there and scream internally. Add space. If you have too much brood, add space. If you have a bunch of laid up brood, stick fresh frames in the middle of it. When those baby bees wake up, they're gonna start making wax. They'll build out those frames. That is like one of the biggest.
No, I couldn't get her out from under the bed most of the day.
Not only, one, it does not take any more energy for the cat to become bees.
Acting weird.
Oh, she's laying up there.
That's important when you're adding small hives. The cat brood produces its own heat. Right? They're all snuggled up in there.
Lola.
Right. It's something to take away. Oh, this is a neat little trick. I just thought I'd throw this on here. Y'all guys know the plastic foundation for lane straw? Take a chop saw, be dramatic, and cut it in half. Throw the half in the middle of the frame, and this is the step-by-step process of how they usually fill it out. Right now, those plastic little inserts coated with wax. Last time I checked, it's $179 per plastic sheet. Cut it in half, double it. You know, that's what I do. And what you'll see is they'll actually start building kind of funny on the side. They'll fill out the middle, fill out the side, then they'll bring it down, and you'll get a full sheet of wax. Now, what I will say, if you put that into an extractor, be careful. Be careful. Now what I have found is after year 2, you'll see that there's a void up underneath here. They'll actually start to glue it. And at year 2 or 3, you can put that cream in an extractor like it's nothing. First year it's molten. And I don't know if y'all guys can see on this middle deal, there's a little bit of. That's what I'm talking about. They'll connect that across on year 2.
All right, didn't see that chicken.
I use it for,
What kind of bags?
you know, hive I'm selling, you know, nukes out of and stuff like that. Oh, more detail on that. So, so when I have drone brood, I feed it to the chickens. And they weren't too sure about it at first. It took some convincing. But anyhow, what's kind of cool is if you use wax strip, what you'll find is that this, it's left to me, but it's right to y'all guys. You'll see all this drone brood. If you start using wax strips for a few year frames, you'll find that it's building between the boxes.
What?
Build it on the frame.
No. Go out and look.
And the reason why is this, typically all your plastic foundation is small cell, it's worker cell, right? For those of y'all guys who don't know, the yellow deal that they sell is for worker brood, not the big drone brood. So what I did is I put a wax strip across the top of this, and they built however they felt like it. And they build drone brood right there. Let's say if you get too much drone brood, not to be dramatic, but I feed them to the wolf. And then what you can do is just take a knife. This also sounds dramatic. Cut the top, leave an inch, throw it back in the hive. They'll rebuild it however they see fit. Sometimes you get drone brood, sometimes you get worker brood back. Not to be dramatic. No.
I'm gonna call for medicine tomorrow.
The third slide. So that is.
I'll call him tomorrow
We'll get it Saturday, babe.
though.
You can pick it up Saturday.
Good, you can't pick it up tomorrow?
Frame and stuck it in the middle. And I did that. I don't suggest you guys doing it.
You're home.
I'll be working outside in the yard, sweating my nutsack off. You want me to stop to go get dog medicine?
Because you gotta be cautious, because you can mess this up. You take an empty frame, and as long as you stick it between 2 straight solid objects, they'll build it out straight. And that comes back to bee space. If I am in a crunch, and oftentimes Every day is a catastrophe for Ethan West, every day. I sit there and I go, oh my God, I don't have any frames that have any foundation, or it didn't come in on time. You know, the shipment is late. What do? These hives are gonna swarm. I'll stick that right in the middle between two filled out frames and go build it straight. So I don't suggest doing that for news, by the way. I was actually gonna leave it out. I was going, oh, I shouldn't get that deep in. Oh, so here's a really important part that a lot of people leave out of their beekeeping presentations. You need to learn plants, or you should learn plants. A lot of people find plants boring because they don't move around, they don't talk. I find them very interesting. At first I did it because I was a 24-year-old boy. They just don't typically like plants. And something that y'all guys need to learn more about is mass blooms. Okay, and you have to expand your ideology, your scope on where your beehive sits. Typically, your beehives, the bees out of it fly about a mile and a half, right? A lot of people go, oh, they go like, you know, the pioneering days, you know, they just go far. I think it's 1.5 miles to 2 miles is realistically what it is. Now, there's a recorded case of a bee flying 6 miles to a nectar source, 6 miles back. I think that's a really skinny beehive. Personally. So a lot of people will walk up to me and tell me, hey, I'm planting this in front of my house for my bees. Do you think that I'll get this type of honey? And I typically go, oh, yeah, sure. And I'm like, oh. But the bees aren't going to pump that single plant like a well, right, for all it's worth, and squeeze out that much nectar to make honey out of that. It's mass blooms, right? It's a cumulative of what's in your area, right? And you got to sit there and go, okay, what do I got? A big thing you guys have, I believe it's called horseman bee balm, right in the middle. It produces a horrible honey. But it's there, it's resource, they'll eat it. You don't have to eat it, but it's a good resource. It's a mass bloom. I drove by them today on the highway. I don't know if there's some back there or not, but anyhow, you're gonna become a flower stalker. You know, be like, well, what's out there? Can I put some bees here? You know, you start bird dogging places. This book, bottom left, this is Wildflowers of the Texas Country, and it's by Marshall Inquist. This one of the nuggets. Wildflowers of Texas, Wildflowers of the Texas Hill Country by Marshall Inquist. It is the best flower guide I've ever used. My mom used this book when she was getting her biology degree at UT. It has flowers relative to the hill country area. It's a very good book. Gives you a lot of information on local flowers, and it's very easy to use. And the Neanderthal, like me, can use it. What does that tell you? You know, it's one of those things. It doesn't get any easier than this. So I suggest getting it. Top left, that's a mesquite tree. You'll see that it's blooming. You know, you can't see it well because it's kind of granulated up here, but it has these white fronds. They all bloom at the same time. That's a mass bloom. If you look over here, there's a white field behind that fence. They're all like daisies. That's a mass bloom, right? And what you're going to find is that in your area, there's mass blooms that happen just about the same week, year after year after year. And you're going to be able to figure out when they are, and you can capitalize on them. And if you do that, you might actually look like you know what you're doing. Oh, by the way, that's mistletoe right there. One thing I discovered this year is you can't eat berries, they're poisonous. That's what I wanted to do first thing. What is the first flowering plant in the hill country? It's kind of weird. Parasitic plant. And the reason I watch it like a hawk is it's the start of the bloom season. So I'm watching it. Something else we're gonna get into, spring does not happen at the same time across the state of Texas. So you probably have to, modify this list by about 2 weeks for y'all guys. This is my list for Mason, Texas. Y'all guys are probably 2 to 3 weeks ahead here. Something else. Y'all guys will have different fauna here. Something they don't talk about, this is why bee clubs are so successful compared to other hobbies, right? You don't see as big of a club system as beekeeping, like local clubs. The reason why is every 50 miles, you get a particular climate. It has its own set of plants, its own weather patterns. And that's why these bee clubs do so well. Because people go, well, I want local information. Well, why? Because things happen locally, and then you go 50 miles over, it's different. You know, just to keep it simple. Like urban. So I'm Mason, Texas. I moved all my bees over there. So, to get into this, there's about 4 types of plants. There's flowers, there's shrubs, there's brush, and there's trees, right? You have these different tiers. What's interesting about Mason, Texas, is it has all 4 tiers of blooming plants, and they're all mass blooms. I kept bees over at Hilltop, Texas, and it is a barren wasteland. Now it looks, some places look pretty good, you know, like out here, it is grass and trees. Your resource here in Dripping Springs is going to be different than that of Mason, Texas. You actually want to target watersheds. If you start putting bees on people's property, you want to go to creeks, you know, things like that. And so y'all guys will help take pictures of this. What you're going to find is you're going to start modifying this to your schedule. A lot of these plants you won't find here. For example, white brush, which is also old bee brush. Yeah. It's a reoccurring bloom. Every time it gets 1.5 inches of rain, it blooms again. It's kind of like a magic trick for me. You know, it's my bailout card, just like boom. Because I'll catch a rain storm and it'll bloom. Oh, 2 things I'm gonna go over on this slide. A pair of scissor tails. The reason I put it on here is a pair of scissor tails shows you that the last frost is gone. A lot of people use the mesquite trees as a sign for spring. I found that a pair of scissor tails is a lot more reliable. It's something else that you're gonna find. With that is a lot of people don't know the difference between mockingbirds and scissor tails. And they're gonna tell you, yeah, I saw a pair of scissor tails the other day. You're going, well, you know, it's about December. Well, I saw them. They were in a bush in my field, and they're mockingbirds. Their profile is very similar, you know. Something else that's here is mesquites in my area. It's the last bloom. When I see it bloom, I go, okay, time to wrap things up, right? Learning your cycle, it does not seem to pay off quick because it takes maybe a year or 2 to figure it out. But once you do, it's a major asset. Because I can tell you, the last day I can make queens for my own uses is June 15th. Because I know the first week of July is the mesquite bloom, right? And past that, you're not going to have any queens really build hives in the dirt. So something to take away. Look at your ecosystems. I won't go over this quite a bit. That's bee brush right there. The picture to your right, top and bottom. You have flowers, you have mesquite trees, You have brush, like bee brush, all tiers are filled out. These are the type of hives that you gotta look at your beekeeping places with. Something I'm gonna mention, thistle, that's on that list I just provided, that is a mass bloom here, and if you look out there, I believe, I saw some thistle. Especially here, it's disturbed earth. People are always doing construction around here at Ribbon Springs. Thistle blooms and grows in disturbed earth. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about?
Yep, so typically what you'll find in any balanced ecosystem is you'll find that your pollen bearing plants are typically fertile coming out of spring. And the reason why is so that hive can start producing bees. At least that's what I've done, such as agaritum, right? And you got to watch out because you'll come out of winter. You'll have nectar, a little bit of nectar stores coming out of winter. And that's when you got to feed your bees sugar water or make sure they have enough stores. You got to make sure you leave enough stores on the fall side because their population is going to amp up. I know this, when I see the mistletoe bloom, about a week or two later, agarita comes in. And I know I need sugar to feed all the bees that they're going to make. And I do feed pollen substitute because I produce bees and I sell them to people. Right now, I do not feed pollen substitute. I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks before the first pollen. Like I still obey the laws of nature. Right. I only get a 2-week jump. Right. I supplement them. And that's what you got to do if you're selling bees to people. When's the first pollen? During the agarita bloom, and that would be that's early March, right in there. Y'all guys will probably have agarita here because you have a caliche type soil. That's something else to pay attention to is soil type. Yeah. So agarita is the first pollen, and you can tell that it's agarita because it'll be red, a red orange color, sticks out quite a bit. So we're about to get to the nuggets. The nugget alert. Golden nuggets. Okay, so if you balance a pyramid on its tip, it would probably follow pretty simplistic, right? Many beekeeping operations are like the diagram here. They don't have a lot of support. You have pests, swarming, inexperience, and you're doomed for failure. It's going to tip over, right? No, that's not a nugget. I'm about to give you some nuggets to fix that. Systematic stability. The key to growing a small bee yard or a large-scale beekeeping operation is bee retention. Ironically, not growth. Right? If you can keep what you got, then you can make more. Right? So here's the pyramid again. Right? If you had a stable bee yard, these are some of the factors at play. Not all of them, because I drew this up last night. Available queens to fix issues is a big one. Predictability to prevent swarming. And I put in parentheses, size and synchronization. I'll get to that later. Experience or consultation. Let's say you don't know what you're doing, like me. You got to call somebody up and go, hey, you got to stop this madness. Right? So it's good to have those phone numbers, right? Healthy bees, and I put in parentheses, stores and free of pests, right? And so all these factors come into play. You have a stable bee yard, pressures and problems. Well, your pyramid ain't going anywhere because it has a stable base, a foundation, right? So this is one of my nuggets. So they're called mini news, right? a lot of people don't know about mini dudes. And at first you really think, well, I'm wasting my time. Right? It is a big, big deal. So y'all guys know Barnyard Bees? This is David at Barnyard Bees on YouTube. He's like a 6-foot gorilla that keeps bees. When he finally turns over the camera, he's like a giant fireman. It's, bulky as heck. He started using mini nukes. And the concept of mini nukes is you make your own queens, right? It's a 2-frame box for laying straw sizes. You take a sheet of fresh eggs and a sheet of honey, walk away for 30 days. And in 30 days, you have a 2 out of 3 chance of having a queen. Here's what's interesting. During those 30 days, the population of that box drops. When she wakes up and she goes, hey, I'm a queen, I lay eggs, she has to start ramping up production to try to swarm out of that sucker. So it'll stay without swarming for about a month after you make it. So you don't have to touch it. And I started using them about 4 or 5 years ago. And what I found is it bailed me out of more problems than I can even begin to tell you. And it's a very useful tool. The use of these is not making more hives, it's having queens on hand. Now, this is what I'll tell you. Generation 1 from a domestic queen would be pretty nice. You start hitting generation 2, where you take a feral queen, that's, let's say, generation 1, breed her again. That granddaughter will be pretty spicy, right? So, breed off with domestic queens, house queens on hand. I have 45 of these. I love them. Maybe I'm a hermit. I don't know. I'm crazy. So I'm just going to list some of the uses for this. So low risk, low resource. Takes 2 frames. If you have 5 boxes, you can give up 2 frames. And it's going to bail you out of a lot of stuff. Queens available on hand for different uses. 2 frame starts for splits. You want to do a split? You got a queen right there. Put those 2 frames in. You start adding frames to it, right? And now you got a nuke because you added some frames to it.
And how long is it before you get to queen?
30 days. When you start the process, it's 30 days. Yep. Close them down. There's a hole. There's a hole on the front of this. Yep, she comes back. This one isn't pictured with it. You can buy a product. It's called, we call it a steel wheel, right? It has this rotatory door on it. We never shut it down. We stick the brood in there, fresh eggs with hang on honey, you take these into it. They'll make a queen in 30 days. Here's something. Uncapped brood. It has to be fresh eggs for them to make a queen. That's what you got to remember with this system. Turn cells into an asset by dissolving them into mini nukes. You walk up to a hive, there's cells everywhere. Chaos. You're going, oh my God, what do I do? I'm horrible at this. You can take those cells and stick them in these boxes and make queens out of them. Assuming you still got a queen, right? Let's say if you're a crazy mini nuke fan before, you got one ready, put a new queen in there, take all the cells out, stick them in these boxes. Pretty cool. House bought queens. You got these little boxes. Let's say you got too many queens, but you know you're going to need them in 3 weeks. Instead of selling them or giving them a franc down the way, that's $45 a queen. You can house them in these little boxes, right? Resuscitate swarm hives by dropping mini nuke frames in. No population gap. So you let a hive make a queen, a 30-day population gap forms. Because it takes 30 days to make a queen. Here, let me start again. You have a big hive, 10 frames, 2 boxes, big son of a gun. It swarms. you're in catastrophe and you cry for a while. And you go, oh man, I'm not gonna make money this year, or me. And, you know, you start talking to your friends about it, and they don't care.
Give me a
Happens in the barber shop all the time. They go,
$5 chalupa
I
box.
saw you cutting your hair, you're my president.
Okay, and if they don't,
This is one I want to talk about. Anyhow, that domestic hive. That big hive swarms. You no longer have a queen. You have all these problems. Take the frame, you drop it in the middle. All of a sudden, that hive no longer has a population.
okay, $5 chalupa box. Else, not your.
In about a week or so.
You want
And I'll
T2.
You gotta
GLT.
understand, the queen, that's 25% of. And you don't have to think that, just get these and start using them,
All
you'll
right.
love it.
Right.
Okay, trap out bait. So if any of you guys do trap outs, you can get these to drift to these. I'm not gonna go into trap outs too much right now. Easy expansion of beeyard. You have queens, now you can make splits. So yeah. Yes, sir.
The mini nuke, you said there's 2 or 3 frames in.
Mhm.
If you have some nukes that are 5-frame boxes, could you just put 2 in there and have some empties, or is that box too big to just put 2 in there?
So he just asked, if you have a 5-frame nuke box, can't you just put 2 frames in it? The answer is yes, but you want to reduce it to where it's defendable. Something else is you can't do that in March. The nights get too cold. That's too little bees, right? And so they can't warm that space. And so it's good to have the little boxes. But you can do it in your warmer months. The minimum resource it takes to make a queen is a sheet of fresh eggs, brood, and bees added to it, right? And so that's a nugget. Yeah, golden nugget. So mini nukes statistically, I'm not gonna go too, I lied, I'm gonna get into this because I'm a nerd. Mini nukes eliminate many problems. Statistically, they pay for themselves. You will gain more using them than what you will lose. And I put a serious stock background on it, like this is serious business. I'm gonna read this. And this is just for y'all guys to grab the concept, statistically what these do for you. So a goofy beekeeper, pictured right, has 5 hives. They are all single Langstroth boxes, 10 frames. If the beekeeper gives up 6 frames of resources to make 3 queens, that's 12% of his frames. That is a major commitment of resources. And when you're bee poor, you cannot afford that, right? So let me see where I'm at. Let's say 2 queens come back from their mating flights. The other 2 empty frames are put back into circulation. Now 8% of his operation is supporting those 2 queens. That's not a lot of resource to have basically extra lives, right? It's a very small commitment. Now we're going to get into the other scenario. The same beekeeper splits 3 hives, 10 frame boxes, big old son of a guns, right? It will take 25% of the beekeeping season to make all 3 queens. 30% of his operation between 5 hives is now in a 30-day process to make queens at a 60% success rate. He gets 2 queens back. If you sit there and you think about it, this is deep theory. That's a lot of resources to commit to making queens. So why wouldn't you do less and have them on hand to be ready to go? That's my point. You don't have to sit here and think about the figures. It gets you ahead because you're able to house queens. You see it on the forums all the time. People go, that's what they do. They go, oh my God, I need a queen. I'll drive to you 50,000 miles. Right? I get the call every day. I get some random number. I go, hey, this is Ethan. They go, hey, do you remember me? I go, no. They go, I need a queen. I went, you got one? Yeah, like, we're talking business. So the last thing on this, on many assets, is giving up 12% worth making queens between 5 hives. Also, circumventing the 30-day gap that it takes to make a queen. Because you can have those mini nukes making queens while your hives are built, while your other 5 hives are doing stuff. Let's say you're Mr. Master Beekeeper. You don't need those queens because you're battery phone. Now you make splits, right? Or if someone has a trap out, you need a queen. They're going to pay you cash money for resources. There you go. So here's my nugget slide. So, for example, this is what my mini nukes look like. Little 2-frame box. I cut the faces of group boxes into thirds to make the face of this, and that's the side of the group box. I took plywood and finished out the bottom and the side. So I bought 10 group boxes, cut the faces by thirds, make a bunch of them. Now they're not pretty, but they're there. So my nugget slide, producing your own queens through mini nukes. This is going to solve a lot of problems in your second year beekeeper. I do not suggest it for your first year beekeeper. Focus on making it last, grow those hives. But on year 2, maybe give this a shot, because it's going to fix a lot of your mess up. And standing before you is a person who has messed up a lot over the years. So these come in clutch, you know. So here's a big secret on efficiency. Hives can make honey on April 10th if they are 5 frames of brood in 1 box. Okay, and it's very simple, right? And April 10th is a Fredericksburg date. Y'all guys might be a little bit ahead. Now, hives can make honey at 1 brood box on April 10th. 4 to 5 frames of brood. So basically, you can do whatever you want to with that hive once it's that size on that date. Whatever you want. You want to make bees, you put brood boxes on it. You want to make honey, you start stacking sutures. I just thought I'd put that there. If they fall below that, they need to be nurtured with 1 box by that date. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Big hives are like Jenga towers. Just so you know, some people do really well with their big hives. And that's great. They're a lot better at beekeeping than me. But what I do with mine is I keep them little. As long as I hit that date at 1 box, then I can deal with them. And personally, I don't like when they get so big, they get a lot meaner. We gotta lift boxes up and down. Something to think about. If you're really interested in what I do, there is a method called single brood box management by Bob Benny on YouTube. It's a good video. It's worth watching. Here's my last tip. This doesn't seem like a tip. If you don't have bees, obviously buy bees. Need bees to start. To be a beekeeper, you gotta buy your initial stuff. Quit buying bees. Okay, it's gonna make you a better beekeeper. Okay, and I know this is a weird way to think about it. Keep bees and let the operation naturally grow to your expertise. Right? Because I'll see it all the time. I have a lady, she said, hey, I want 25 news. And got money? And she was like, yes, here you go. I go, well, wait a second. How long you been beekeeping? A year. And I'm like, buddy, no. And the reason why is she would have bought those bees and they all probably would have died. And here's the deal. I like making money, but I also don't like leading people along, right? If a rancher buys a bunch of cows and he don't know how to take care of them, and all of a sudden they all die off, they naturally, this sounds morbid, naturally adjust to what level he can handle. Same thing in beekeeping. If you're good at it, you can triple every year. If you're bad at it, well, you can lose everything. And just so you know, I've had lost everything. You know, it hurts. You think you know a thing or two. Oh, thinking bee terms. This is kind of an interesting one. We were talking about water a while ago, right? This is the same water trough. On the left is a resource the bees don't use for water. On the right, they're all over it. You guys know the difference?
One's nasty, one color.
One's nasty and one's, yeah. What's interesting is the algae on the top. On the left, it's a barrier they can't penetrate and drink from. On the right, it's broken up and they can actually crawl to the edge of the algae and drink from them. So I just thought I'd put that up there. Something new I learned the other day. Just thought I'd throw it in there. I thought it was cool. Can I answer any questions? Yes, sir. That's wonderful. So if you have water lilies in your ponds, great platforms, they're a lot prettier than the algae. So yeah, water lilies are gorgeous. So, all right.
Yay.
Yes, sir.
It appears to be an exceptional time for beekeeping. So a lot of these things. We're all great.
Yeah. So he's saying right now is a abundant time for beekeeping, and with it being spring, I guess it's early summer, the resources are very rich. And this year we've had a lot of rain. This is a good year to start. Something to beware, because I'm always paranoid. It's like I look out and I go, it's either if I see a rainstorm, I go, oh, that's hail. The sun shines, I go 180-degree heat, right? The bloom cycle with the plants will naturally tell you when things are going to shut off. Learning that, your timing will be excellent. Look for animal signs. What's interesting about bees is they are what we call an indicator species. A common reference is clams, you know, in the nasty riverbeds. If you see all of them all of a sudden float up to the top and die, I don't know how clams die. We don't got water in the basin. But if you see them all die, what an indicator species signifies is the health of the ecosystem. Same thing with bees, right? How that hive is doing is reflective on your local ecosystem. Now, what's interesting is other animals detect when fall is coming. Other animals detect when we're about to shut off for summer. Breeding cycles, all sorts of things will give you hints. One of the most interesting ones in Mason is in November. When I hear the crickets chirp at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day, it is time to shut everything down. Because it tells me that the temperature has reached 70 degrees, 12 to 1 o'clock. And I go, uh-oh, all my projects need to get thrown out. And what it is the crickets that usually chirp around 70 degrees, right? So I listen to them. I go, okay, time to wrap things up. And they chirp in the middle of November, typically. So this is what happens when you live alone. There's no beekeepers out there. It's just me and one other dude. Yeah. And he'll watch the forecast the day. Yeah, like, I know this, every morning I go to my barber shop, there's about 5 old men there. They go, hey, what's going on in town? And I go, oh, I don't know, you tell me. And it is an interesting little community. I get every bee-related piece of information at the speed of light. Which is kind of funny. I get to hear about, I'll just make up a name, Mary Sue, who had a bee in her Dr. Pepper. Now, she was done drinking it, but it was in there, and it was no good, and it was one of mine. And I go, well, hey, did it have my brand on it? They look at me. Yeah. So with my honey, I sell my honey. However, I do treat, I won't hide that. However, I don't treat my supers on. Because I have a natural cycle that I go through every year. We treat after the supers are off. And something else is we don't take honey out of root boxes. So it doesn't get all crossed up. So, yeah, but you have to really master the bloom cycle, the time of year to do that. So yeah, when you sell bees to people, you got to ensure that they're 100% okay when they receive it. You know, I was a natural beekeeper for 9 years. Awesome, great, you know, respect it. But going commercial, you know, so got to change it up. So yeah, that's also why I can tell you volumes on top bars like I do. Because I've done it. I've also pulled hives out of people's houses and you got to eyeball them too, you know, so, any other questions? Is that it? All right.
Right.
Okay, I'll get back.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. I learned a lot. It's great to have these really experienced speakers come in and share a point of view that you may not have heard before. And it makes it all worthwhile when I see all these people out here enjoying what we're doing. If you're not a member, consider joining. The other form of compensation we accept is appreciation. So George McGiz, our president, arranged for Ethan to be here tonight. If you think she did a great job, give her a shout out on Facebook or next time you see her. Wendy's got something.
And in return, people did not,
I want to say thank you to our Vice President Darren and Shanna right here and Mark and
Thank you. All right, thanks, everybody. We're gonna try to clear out by 8 o'clock, so the folks here can get home to their families.